All right, class is in session once again here at the Apartment Academy, the multifamily industry's only operations-focused podcast and your institute for higher NOI. I'm your host, the Dean of the Apartment Academy, Daniel Cunningham, and today's guest is Ken Gee. Ken is the founder and president of KRI Partners, a firm that does multifamily investing, but primarily in the realm of the value add acquisition. So we're going to be focused on what that means, what are the basic components of a good value add transaction, what kind of returns you can expect. So if you're considering investing in multifamily through a value add kind of acquisition, or you don't know what that even means, this is the episode for you. Here is Ken. Hello, Professor Gee. Welcome to the virtual campus here at the Apartment Academy. Thanks for coming by today to lecture to our Lecture Hall 101 here. I appreciate it.
Oh, so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Ken, just sets the table here for a little bit. You're founder, CEO, or president of KRI Partners. You want to talk a little about what that company is, what you guys do?
Yeah, so we're a multifamily value-add investment firm. So we generally go look for it's all multifamily. So we go look for apartments, properties that we think we can add value to in some way, shape, or form, either as physical improvements, management improvements. Usually it's both. And then because of those improvements, we're going to be able to add value by moving our rent structure up and appealing to a better quality resident. A nicer property usually does that, generates more cash flow, and that's generally how we make money.
How long has the company been around?
Yeah, since 1997. We formed it back in 1997. Originally, really for myself. It was originally just for myself to build a real estate portfolio, but what I learned over time is that we can, over time we've brought in new investors, and so now we do this in a very much a syndication private equity fund model, and so we're able to help a lot more than just ourselves now do well with real estate.
And were you involved in multifamily investing in some way before this, or what led you to found the company?
Yeah, good question. So I grew up, a little backstory. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, got my undergrad from the University of Toledo, moved to Cleveland, went to work for a bank for 5 years as a commercial lender. Got my graduate degree from Case Western Reserve, a private school in Cleveland. And then I went to work for Deloitte as a CPA for 7 years. And it was at that point that I realized, as I was staring at my daughter one night in the middle of the night, that, I was working really hard, and the quality time I got to spend with her was in the middle of the night, right? And that says something, right? That's not supposed to be when you spend quality time with your kids. When I was doing her feeding, so I got to work and said, you know what? When I was a banker, all my customers had real estate and made a ton of money. When I was at Deloitte, I was still there. We had a massive real estate practice. Those people were all killing it, and I thought, wait a minute, if these people can figure this out, so can I. And so I decided to go out, finally had enough guts after about a year and a half and, a lot of money learning this business, or at least I thought I learned it. We bought 3 small apartment communities, and 3 years later sold them for $500,000 profit, and then the rest has been history. Once you do that and you're able to prove that, you now figure out how you're going to do all the things you want to do for your kids and your family. So you stay focused on that. So that made the switch for me, because I realized I could make a lot more money working not nearly as hard as I was as a CPA at Deloitte.
Yeah. So, I think it's fair to say my first introduction into this career was really working for Aimco, Real Estate Investment Trust in an asset management capacity. But I moved to a company that sounds very similar in its model to what you guys are doing here in Los Angeles. That was, as you phrased it, value-added investing. The listeners may not really, although you touched on a few of the components of value-add investing, the listeners may not totally understand what value investing is. So let's take a step back for a moment and let's talk about what it means to look for a value-added deal. What is executing against the value-added opportunity look like? What are the components? What does value-added mean?
Yeah, so good question. So let's start from, just the economics. Let's start there. So when you think about the economics of a value-add deal, somehow we have to take a property from where it's worth, what it's worth today, and what is going to be worth in the future when we're done with that. So in the apartment world, as you no doubt know, we love apartments because there's a pretty strong relationship between our ability to generate additional cash flow and the ability to that property to be worth more. So usually for every dollar of NOI that we create, a net operating income, we're able to increase the value of that property by 18 to 20 times. So that's the first thing. We're looking for an opportunity where we have a property that, for a number of reasons, and we'll talk about those in a second, for whatever reason, it is where it is, we feel that we can bring it to the next level and appeal to a much better tenant quality, and then therefore command higher rents. Because we're able to get more rents, we're able to add value, because that's how investors value multifamily apartments, based on its ability to generate cash flow. So now what does that look like? So the question, so when you approach a property, I look at the physical component first. The first thing that has to happen to me when I go to the property is it's got to have something that I feel that is really interesting about that property that can make somebody want to live there. I call it character. You can call it whatever you want, but it has to be something about that property that makes it cool, right? Or could make it cool if it was developed. Maybe it's got a really nice lake, and maybe it's just poorly kept. Maybe it has great bones. It's just been deferred maintenance. Whatever it is, you got to figure out what it is that, as a renter approaches that property, they're gonna be impressed from the very moment they get to the property. That's really, really important, because if you don't have that, you lose a huge ability to move rents and to get people to pay for all this value, all this nice things that you're going to add to the property, because if they can't get emotional about it, it's not going to matter.
This is an exterior signature characteristic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If it doesn't have that character component, we generally don't pursue it, because I need someone, you think about this, if you're bringing your girlfriend home, you're going to have dinner and a movie or something. You don't want to be embarrassed to drive up to your apartment complex, right? You want to be proud of where you live. And if it's not there now, I have to feel like we can bring it there. So that's what's important.
It all comes down to impressing women at the end of the day, doesn't it?
It always does. At least for us men, it does. So now we approach our value add. When I think about value add now, I like to start outside and go in. So what I want to do is I want to pretend like I'm that renter, and I drive up to the property. Does it look appealing? Does it feel nice? Does it feel like it's a place I want to actually turn into? Or, oh boy, I need to keep going, right? So I approach this as I go in. I start with the signage. I start with the approach to the leasing office, and then I'll go after the amenity package. And I love to build out a nice amenity package, because then, if I'm able to do that, I give my leasing people a story to tell. So imagine if I'm able to put an outdoor kitchen near the pool, which is near a playground, also a fitness center, outdoor TV with a nice sitting area. Now that leasing person, when they're touring the property with a prospective renter, we can tell this whole story about mom, dad, and the kids, coming to the pool, mom's working out, dad's watching the football game on the outdoor TV, cooks lunch, everybody has lunch, dad goes, works out, it's a whole family event, right? So people are in multifamily properties. Sometimes they're there because they have to be, but other times they're there because they want to be, and they want to have an environment that they probably couldn't create in their single family home. Think about all those things I just described. It gets very expensive to provide that on a one-off basis for a person. So we like to, I always tell people, we like to get them at hello, right? That Jerry Maguire movie. Remember, you had me at hello? That's what we want to do. We want to get them in, impress them with the amenity package. Now they're excited, like, wow, this place is cool. I love this place, right? I could see our whole family out here and enjoying a Sunday afternoon. And then you go take them to the unit, so you control the whole common area path to the unit. Notice we haven't touched a unit yet. And that's important, because everything that goes on in the unit is behind what? A closed and locked door. But if I don't have a nice story to get them to that front door, I can't lease to them. So then we'll go into the units, and all we need to do in the units is not let them down, right? I'm not saying that we don't need to rely on, granite countertops and over the top things inside the unit to grab them emotionally. We've already got them emotionally. We just need to give them then a nice unit. And the reason that's so important is, well, first of all, we need to get them to the front door. But secondly, every dollar you spend on your common area, you only spend it once. Every dollar you spend in your unit, you spend over and over and over and over again. So you want to really manage those unit upgrades. I'm not saying that you don't upgrade the unit. You don't need the unit to grab that person emotionally. You've already done that with the exterior. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how we approach it.
And I think that's interesting. That may be the opposite of what other people think about when they think about, value add rehab. They think about, I got to upgrade to the stainless appliance package and, like you said, the granite countertops. We'll go with real wood floors. That is all less important in your mind than the physical impression of the asset that they're having when they first arrive.
Yeah. So what happens to us, and this comes from because we're operators, right? We're vertically integrated. We run our own properties, so we get the real feedback. And what happens is, I know when we have not nailed it on the exterior of a property. When my leasing agent says to me, we keep making appointments and they don't show. Well, what's that tell me? That tells me that they did show. Most people show, but they didn't stop. They just kept right on going. So I have to make sure that from the moment they see the property, that they're excited about it so I can get them to the front door. And so I'm not suggesting that maybe it is appropriate for granite or stainless steel inside the unit. What I'm trying to say is that is not where you need to grab them emotionally. You just need to not let them down in that unit. And that's important because, again, if you've got 200 units, man, that number racks up really fast when you do $5,000 200 times, for example.
And how do you size the appropriate amount to spend on the rehab package, commercial, common, and interior unit? You made an interesting point. For every dollar you raise in NOI, you can raise valuation $18 to $20, which sounds to me like somewhere around a 5 cap rate you're considering. So I'm working the math backward on that math. So if you can expect to add that much value, how many dollars? How do you size the right amount to spend on a value add acquisition then in terms of the capital expense?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'll tell you how we do it. We reverse engineer the whole process. So, all right, so what does that mean? Well, we look at the neighborhood and we say, okay, here's our, and this is critical, right? You've got to know the competitive market, where the property's at today, and actually do the homework. Go to those properties, figure out what they look like, and be honest about comparing it to yourselves. So if a prospective renter were to visit your property and all the surrounding properties, where would they put you in that stack? I call it a rent stack. And then say, okay, wait a minute. Now let's think about, if I want to make this property that much nicer, I'm going to improve it. So that means I got to go visit a whole new set of comps, because once I do what I want to do, those old comps aren't comps anymore. I'm competing with another new comp set. So I'll go to that new comp set and I say, okay, this is where I think I can bring this property. Now, it depends on what's in the market. Sometimes we'll see there's a property here, there's properties up here, and we're going to make a property that fills that void. Sometimes we're just going to draft right below those. It depends on the market. But what I need to do is understand where I'm going. So once I know where I can take this thing, and for example, if I have an older property and I'm competing against a bunch of new construction, well then, if there's nothing in between, well, I want to fill that gap. And I want to make sure that I manage the delta between what the new properties are charging and what I can charge, so that I fit, right? People don't necessarily want to pay top of the line rents, but they want to put a swimming pool and a fitness center and an outdoor kit. They want those things. They just don't need it super decked out over the top. So we manage that rent delta. So now we know where we can take it, right? We have a feel for the market and where this property could potentially fit in. And then so that means now we know where rents can go. Once we know where rents can go, we can figure out where value can go. So we can then back into our renovation budget so that we can spend an amount that makes sense for the market that we're competing with, right? So let's say you did it the other way around. You go into the unit, you spend, and people do this all the time. You go do stainless, you do granite, you do backsplashes, you just go crazy, right? And then you look at the rent comps that you're trying to compete with. and you're trying to compete with new properties, but you're not new. Your floor plan isn't new. You got 8-foot ceilings, right? There's some things you just can't fix. So now you spend all this money trying to compete with a property that you're probably never going to compete with, right? So that would see people do make that mistake a lot. I mean, we counsel our third-party clients that we do some third-party management to just not overspend, because you don't need to do all that to get to where you need to be, and typically it's a lot less. So to answer your question very in a very short way, it's reverse engineer the process. That brings you down to how much you can spend, because then it really just becomes a math equation. You know what returns you need. You know what returns your investors need. You can make assumptions about your exit cap rate. You can figure all that out and say, okay, this is what I think we can spend.
Now, there was a time when you could present that pro forma and what you work into, and you're working backwards where you think the asset can be after you've raised rents, et cetera. And you could present that to a lender, and you could get some of the capital, or maybe all of the capital needs, financed through them based on this future-looking pro forma. This is December 2022. Has the world changed? Is that even possible still now?
So the question is, the credit markets have changed. There is no doubt about it. So the bridge loan market is what people used to use to do that. You can still get bridge loans, but there's very few of them, and it's very, very expensive. So now people are funding the CapEx with equity. That's the biggest change. You can get bridge loan money now, but man, it's almost it's expensive. It's hard money. So that market is really kind of dried up. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. So you just need to do it with your own equity. So what that means is you really need to be careful about what you spend, because now you're really you're dealing with that denominator when you do your return calculations, and the amount that you have to raise is a critical component of that. So you got to be super efficient. So yeah, we're still pursuing value add strategies even in today's market. We just are funding them differently.
You're just raising a little more capital. So we've covered kind of the physical asset, the upgrade, what people often think about when they think about value add. But there are other components, right, that you can improve that ultimately raises the value of the property. What are some of those things?
Well, let's talk about management, because what happens with these properties after a while, if it is operating below market, if it's operating below where it should be, it's no doubt developed some sort of reputation in the market. So oftentimes what we'll do, just depends on how bad the reputation is, we'll rebrand the property with a new name and so on and so forth. But it has to do with the management. And what we usually find when we find these value add opportunities, we go in and we impose our operations, right? I'll call it a 90-day turnaround plan. That's what we call it. The first 30 days when we go to the property, we know what we're going to find. We're going to have 1,000 work orders. I'm probably exaggerating, hopefully, but a ton of work orders, lots of people complaining, and telling us everything that the prior owner didn't do. And I call that triage. That's the first 30 days or first phase. Then the second phase that we get into is, okay, now that we understand what's going on, now we go and we start proving to the residents that we actually will deliver. But guess what, resident? We need you to pay your rent on time. If you don't, we're going to throw you out, right? It's a two-way street here. So that second phase, usually it's the second 30-day period, we then start to impose our processes on it, and people are starting to trust us, and we're starting to get the feedback. Oh my gosh, we're so glad you're here. They never fixed anything. We can see that you're doing everything, blah, blah, blah. Third 30-day or third phase, right? It depends on the size of the property, how long that phase is. But that third phase, it starts to feel like our property now. Then we're in a position that not only are we physically improving the asset, but now we're running it professionally. We're keeping our end of the bargain, right? So now when we go through our renewal process, it makes sense that we're able to move rents, right? People are like, well, of course. I mean, you're actually doing what you were supposed to do. They may not be happy about the rent increase, but we know what their alternatives are, so we don't get too aggressive. And then those that do move, the reputation now has started to change in the marketplace. And as a result of that, we get to market rents right away with those new people coming in. So the management side of this thing, a lot of people dismiss it, but I'm here to tell you that once you start running that property well, your reputation changes pretty quickly. And you'll hear people say, "Oh yeah, I remember that property. It used to be, boy, it isn't like that anymore." And now, when we add the management changes and the physical changes, it's a completely different ballgame for people.
Yeah. Is there let's talk about the operational piece of all of that. A is there a tech stack you tend to bring along with you that helps provide that increased level of service? Are there different processes that you follow that you find poor operators typically don't have in place that make a difference? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, so I mean, it has to do. We've been at this for 25 years, so and I'm a pretty detail-oriented guy, right? CPA, lender, you would expect me to be a detail-oriented guy. So what we do over the 25 years, what we've done is, when we encounter a problem, we first of all fix the problem. Then we need to try to figure out why did it happen? What system or process can we put in place to stop it from happening again? And then how do I get feedback all the way up to me if it doesn't happen? So as we encounter problems over 25 years, and trust me, we've solved a lot of them, right? We have these processes that, of course, continue to evolve, but they're all designed to, as you grow, right? If you only have 20 units, I mean, you could probably manage every move-in yourself and make sure you know what's going on. But when you have 2,000, well, that's a different story. I'm not there for move-ins, but I need to know that they're going well. So generating that whole feedback loop is super critical. So we have, everybody, every company has what they call best practices. But I mean, we have a way we turn units. We have a way that we decide which units we're going to turn in what order, how we're going to do delinquencies, all those things we have, sort of fine-tuned over time. And we continue to do that. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just wonder if you have any specifics. Like you might say, look, the number one thing we tend to run into is work orders are at these properties are handled on paper. So we get a resident portal up right away. That's the first thing we do: get a resident portal up, allow people to submit their work orders. Like might be something like that is on your short list of things that you typically improve.
The short list is service. The short list of service. I can't tell you how many times we just know it's going to happen. When we take over a property, we're going to hear, remember that first phase? We call it triage. It's all the complaints, all the work orders that haven't been fixed for years because they just ignored them. The number one thing you have to do is you have to prove to the market that you're going to take care of them. This is your home. We want you to be happy here. And we bring that whole positive approach to the whole property. And it's usually refreshing for people. The resident portal and the online payments and all that stuff. Yes, that's all part of what we do. I don't know that in and of itself is what makes us memorable. It is, people just want to be heard. They want you to take care of them. I mean, think about it, right? Anytime you buy anything, you don't want to be snubbed by the person you bought it from. You want them to take care of you, right? And actually care that you gave them money and you're supposed to get something in return. And if it's not happening the way it should, that you're going to stand behind that. When that's all people really don't have massively high expectations. It's just so many people don't meet them. So that's why service is our deal. And of course, along with that, comes the other. I mean, we're going to leverage technology to make us more efficient and all that kind of stuff. But it all comes down to service. If you don't take care of your tenants, what are they going to do? They're going to leave, and you're going to be rebranding the property and trying to communicate to the world that you're this new company. Yet if you don't take care of the people, well, guess what? You're doing exactly what the old owner did, and you would have wasted all your time and energy trying to rebrand and redevelop a new reputation when you're not delivering for the people that live there.
Okay, cool. So we talked about the physical asset, improving the physical asset. We talked about we just talked about service, like providing better service. You touched on marketing. You need to change the market perception of the asset itself. We could spend probably whole shows talking about each one of these. What about on the expense side, efficiencies, driving efficiencies on that side? Is that a big part of this value add proposition, or is that catch can? Sometimes there's efficiencies there, sometimes there's not. Is there anything you can do better generally when you step into these on the finance front? Yeah.
So when we underwrite a property, we underwrite it the way we're going to run it. And yeah, do we see a lot of waste with sellers? We do. Of course, a lot of times it's labor. I mean, properties that are poorly run for a myriad of reasons. I mean, maybe they're not paying attention, maybe they're understaffed. Who knows what the reason is? So, excuse me. We put, how we manage the expenses. We're going to manage them the same way, no matter what. Do we see a lot of improvement? We usually do. I mean, a perfect example of a process leading to lower expenses. Just think about, we're in Florida, and so you can't just turn off the air conditioner when somebody vacates. If you do, you have an apartment full of mold. That's just what happens because of the heat and humidity. So in our world, what we do is we manage the maintenance guys. I mean, they don't want it to be hot when they're in there working, so they'll turn the temperature down, make themselves comfortable, and then when they leave, they don't turn it up. They don't turn it up to 80 or something like that. So now we get massive expense just heating a unit when the maintenance guy hasn't been there in 24 hours, right? That kind of stuff. So we get super detailed about those kind of operating things to make sure that we're managing all the expenses. And then in our world, the property manager is responsible for the property. We have a regional manager then it oversees that. And then, of course, I pay attention to all of our P&Ls, and if something seems like it's out of whack, then we drill down and figure out what's going on there. So, we've always been very expense conscious because, I mean, you have to be. I mean, we're not Apple that can, I don't know what their margins are, but, we don't pay out $150, $200 to make something and can sell it for $1,200. That's just not how our business works. I mean, there's slim margins, so we've got to be as efficient as we can. The number one thing that we have probably done, though, to reduce our expenses is use technology. I mean, we process our invoices through a third party. Our property managers never have to deal with that except to bring it up on their computer screen and make sure that they approve it and make sure the guy was actually there and he painted the unit and so on. So we use that for that. Just think about online payments. Imagine how many man hours are used if you allow your sites to do on-site collection. Because what do people do? Many people will slide it in the slot and leave, but now you've got your person taking the money orders or the checks and posting them into the system and doing all that. But you also get the person who wants to sit down, visit with the leasing person, spend 20, 30 minutes with them, because once they sit down, you can't get rid of them. And they just eat up massive, massive hours. So just that alone, just going to an online-only system, eliminates all that. Now managers can't steal money they never touched. With our systems, you laugh, but it's a real deal, man. It's a real deal. And in our system, you can actually go to Walmart, hand them a card that we give you, and pay your rent at Walmart. And within a minute, it posts in our system. We can see you paid. So it's those kind of things. Whenever we can use technology to replace humans, we try to do that, right? I mean, we still have to have human touch, and we still are touring people through properties, but we do everything we can. And so what we've been able to do, the hardest part of our business is labor, and because of our adoption of technology, we've been able to leverage more people per 100 units, or less people per 100 units, just to try to get that expense down and to keep them focused on the right things.
Yeah, I foresee a number of episodes here in the coming year about centralization and doing that. That's really taking hold. In our last couple of minutes together, I just want to, first of all, ask you to share the kinds of returns that one can expect in a value-added execution. And then if you wouldn't mind, just talk real briefly about the complications, the challenges behind syndication, like how you go about that, and because that sometimes is intimidating for folks looking into the business. But first, the return. What after all this effort, what do you typically try to pro forma?
Yeah, so we underwrite to a 15% annual return overall. So that's between the quarterly cash flow distributions and then what's earned on the back end. It's a value add business model. So we get a little bit while we own the property, right? We always buy cash flowing assets, but then most of the money is made when you sell. When you add all that together, we're looking for a 15% annual return. Now, it's our goal to beat that, and we're not promising a 15%, but that's our target when we do our underwriting, and we use a 5-year hold period on that. We want to hold 3 to 5 years, but maybe we'll have to hold longer. We don't know, but we budget out 5 years initially. And then, so then as we as we go on and actually, so let me back up. Part of our return is the preferred return. Part of this is what you get when you sell. Now, when we roll it all together, we typically get north of 20%. So if I just look at the last 3 deals that we took full cycle, right, it's not fair to take one that hasn't sold yet because that's not realized. But we did one in Orange City. The annual return was 36%. We did one in Belle Reve. It was in Jacksonville. That one was an annual return to the investors at 22%. And we did another one in Clearwater. That one was 30% annual returns. So what typically happens in our world, we try to get somewhere between 1.8 and 2.0. So we try to almost double your money within the hold period that we have it. That's what we try to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you just maybe realize what I think we probably need a whole show to talk about the syndication deal, because you just talk about preferred return, and in setting up a syndication deal, deciding preferred return, how is that paid, part of the complication. Probably don't have time for that, but do share what that means, a preferred return, for those that are listening.
Yeah, so preferred return, I'm a firm believer that if you're going to go, and this is going to play into the other question that you asked me, if you're going to go into the syndication game, you're going to ask other people to give you money that you're going to help them make money, right? But you're in charge, not them, that you're in charge. So I believe that if you're going to do that, one of the responsibilities you have as the sponsor, right, the person doing the deal, is that you're going to put your investors first. I think that's only fair. If I'm going to ask you to give me money, I should put you first, right? Because you have no control. So the preferred return simply means that let's say it's 6%, right? On our current fund, we're paying 6% preferred return. That means you get the first 6%. And then in our case, you get all your capital back. And only then, and I know you're going to have a whole nother show on this, but only then do we get our profit bonus, right? Our performance bonus. We'll leave it at that, right? But what's important is that you're first. It's usually not guaranteed, but it's preferred, right? You are getting the first 6%. Now, if all the property does is 6%, guess what? You're the only one that gets anything out of it, right? That's how it should be. Because quite honestly, if we deliver you a deal that only does 6%, we didn't do a very good job, right? We probably don't deserve a bonus. At least that's what I think. So that's why now to really quickly get back to your syndication thing. I mean, when you go into the world of syndicating and asking other people for money, it raises your requirement, at least in my opinion, to be transparent and to really be open and sharing. A lot of people don't like to do this. That's why they don't raise money from other people. But we're extremely transparent. We want our investors to know exactly what's going on all the time, because after all, it's their money.
Yeah, and I would venture to say that most people that consider getting into real estate investing don't have the wherewithal to fully fund a deal like this on their own. They need to syndicate, need to bring other investors, and so all of this nuance is important. We'll do that another time. Anatomy of a syndicated deal would be another episode here at the Academy. But Ken, if people are interested though in investing in one of your deals, becoming part of one of your syndications, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so go to KRIPartners.com/invest, and that'll take you to a page where you can see it's a webinar. I do the webinar myself. A pre-recorded webinar. It'll understand exactly what we're doing. Lots of testimonials. We'll give you a video of actually the Jacksonville deal that I talked about. Exactly what we did. It's about a 20-minute video, and it really gives you a good feel for what we do. And then probably most importantly, right there is we use Verivest to verify our track record. So all of our 25 years worth of deals are right there. The returns have all been verified by Verivest, and you can see exactly what our track record is. So, it's really important to me that we open our doors and show you exactly what we've done, what we do, and that's how we do that, by doing that. So KRIPartners.com/invest. Hopefully easy to remember.
Thank you, Professor Gee, for coming on today and lecturing to our greater student body here at the Apartment Academy. We appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thank you for joining us at this week's episode of the Apartment Academy podcast. The Apartment Academy is a production of Leonardo 24/7, the industry's leader in multifamily operations and maintenance software. At Apartment Academy, we realize the hard work that goes into property management and the stress that comes along with it. Leonardo 24/7 takes the guesswork out of your team's day-to-day by providing customized daily guidance on tasks that need to be done, guaranteeing consistent operations across your entire portfolio. To learn more, visit www.leonardo247.com today.